Hello, my name is Big Bubble, and I sometimes go by the name of Simon, and this is a thoughts video. So firstly, I want to say thank you to my friend Luke for letting me play his copy of Mythic Battles Pantheon. This is a game that came out on Kickstarter last year, in 2017, or was it 2016? I think it was 2017 if I'm not mistaken, and it's finally gotten to him. So this was a game I thought of backing back then, but it was kind of unsure of how good it would be. It was from the same designers who did Conan, and I've played Conan beginning of last year, and I wasn't particularly taken with it. I enjoyed it, but at the same time, I was just like, I could probably just go and play Imperial Assault, and some of the elements of Conan didn't really work for me, and it had a couple of issues that I wasn't completely happy with. So that's why I didn't really back Mythic Battles Pantheon. And then I got a chance to play it, and I was pleasantly surprised. Now, normally I would gush over a game, and this is no exception. However, I do want to make one thing clear, and that is this game does cost a lot of money for what it's offering, but what it's offering is a lot. So it's also not a game that everyone's going to own. If you don't like certain miniature types, you're not going to like this game. If you don't like dice rolling and combat, you're probably not going to like this game. So again, it's not going to be the game for everyone, but this is purely a skirmish game. So this is not your equivalent of, say, a Warhammer, dudes on the table where you can control the army. This is more of a smaller scenario. So if you prefer games like Necromunda, where you can like field a small squad of soldiers and have them fight against another squad of soldiers, that's kind of more in line of what you're looking for in this game. It's very much the skirmish element. Similarly, you could probably look at it close to, like, say, Star Wars Imperial Assault that has a skirmish mode where you bring in like a 40 points worth of troops. This is kind of the same thing where you had 18 points to spend and you'll draft your armies. The story or background behind the game is a bit weird. It's basically Hera got angry, she released the Titans, and now all chaos has erupted in the Greek mythology. And so everyone's trying to battle it out for this weird god feel. Or it's not really one of the strongest elements to the game, I'll be honest. But you don't really care about it. It does play on Greek mythology really nicely. Every single one of your favorite characters is in this game. If you like Heracles, is it Heracles, I think? Or, well, it's yeah, it is Heracles. But if you like him, then he's in this game. If you like Athena, she's in this game. If you like Zeus, he's in this game. Basically, all your favorites from Greek mythology are there. The Centaur, the Hydra, the three-headed Cerberus dog, they're all there. And, of course, that doesn't include the many expansions. There are a lot of expansions to this game. There is definitely a lot of quantity to this game, but it doesn't mean there's not any quality. You see, this game is very good. So, how the game plays. Essentially, at the start, you're going to draft your god, who is your divinity, essentially, and then you're going to choose which monsters and heroes and troops are going to accomplish that. So you have your Achilles, and your, like I said, Heracles, you have your Chiron, you have your troops. It could be like the simple hoplites, or it could be, say, infernal dogs, or it could be satyrs. You have your choice of things. So you would draft a small army, and then you'll choose what map you want to play on, and then you'll obviously start playing. The game is interesting how it works. You are going to have a deck of cards, and the deck of cards is determined by which heroes and creatures you've drafted, and each one comes with a certain number of cards. You can only, on your turn, activate that hero or that character if you play one of their cards. So, for example, a character that's really strong, like the Hydra, for example, he might be able to hit really hard, but he might not have a lot of activation cards. Likewise, a weaker character, where one has more like utility purposes, so say, for example, Achilles or Odysseus, who's more in line of commanding your troops. He has a bit more activation cards, and therefore he has more turns, but those turns are going to be weaker. So it's a choice of, like, do you want to balance which kind of cards do you want? Do you want to have strong creatures, or would you have more activations of a certain type? It's tricky to manage. Then, once you've activated a card, you then have two actions on your turn. You can either do a simple action, which can be multiple. It can be like to move and then attack, or just move twice. Or it can be a complex action, which might be to absorb energy, or it might be to perform a special ability. It really does depend, but essentially you're just going to be moving and attacking. Attacking comes in the form of either ranged combat or melee combat, and again that gets transferred over into dice. The dice are probably not one of my favorite. It's worse enough having dice mechanics in general. I don't like dice combat. With Twilight Imperium, it's fine. It's nothing major. But then again, combat's not the biggest part of Twilight Imperium. But in this game, combat's weird. You're essentially going to roll dice, and then you're trying to get numbers to equal up to the defense of the character. And then you can re-roll certain dice if they are fives, and then those will add on to the dice that they get. But then if you roll blanks, they turn into... It's not clean. The combat is not clean, and it'll probably take you like at least probably 2 games to really wrap your head around how it plays. And so this could probably be, I would say, a negative point if you're trying to introduce new people to the game for the first time. That is definitely going to be one of the negatives. That's pretty much it when it comes to the complexity of the game. You're simply just going to move your characters around the board and attack. Now, the depth comes in with the various characters. Different characters have different abilities. Zeus can, say, shoot a lightning bolt. Artemis has a bow attack, which can be basically headshot a guy from a mile away. Athena is very good at playing strategy cards. Your deck is also filled with these Art of War cards or Tactics cards, which can be used to, say, either draw more cards or search a library for a specific character card, or it could be used to, say, activate another person during your turn. So there's a lot of play around, and of course, different characters will give you different amounts of those cards. So very much you have the customization that a lot of miniature games offer you, which is fantastic. But that is really the game. It's just simply moving and combat, and then it gets fleshed out by the various systems. It gets fleshed out by character abilities, and then it also gets fleshed out in what scenario you're playing. There are 2 ways to win the game. You're either going to destroy the enemy's god or titan, or you're going to collect 4 of these god fuels. But that's really it. That's the only 2 ways to win. But that doesn't mean the game takes long. A game of Mythic Battles Pantheon can probably take only like an hour and a half at most, and you'll probably be drafting for a good, say, 20 minutes of those. It's quite nice and fast and doesn't overstay its welcome, which is rather nice. And then another layer of depth, of course, is the terrain you're battling on. Certain terrains have different features. So, for example, if you're fighting in, say, Hades, the underworld, then you have the river Styx flowing through the map, and the river Styx can't be crossed by monsters and gods, which means you kind of are restrained if you have took a lot of those characters. But if you have, say, heroes and troops, they have more freedom to move around, but again, you're compromising because they're not as strong as monsters or gods. So there's a nice little thought behind there. You have different terrain types. You have swamp, which will slow down your movement. You have trees and rocks and pillars that can all be picked up by certain heroes. Like Hercules can pick up a rock and then basically chuck it at someone, or they can take a tree and swing it and knock a person out, and that's great. So your depth kind of gets created based on what troops you have, but also what the map you played. The game also offers even more when it comes to, well, firstly, just the number of characters there are, but I'll get to that in a bit. But it also offers more depth in terms of how many scenarios there are. There are just 2-player skirmish maps, but you can play 4-player modes if you want to. You can have a different drafting system. Instead of drafting all the cards, you have a selection of cards that you have to then draft from, which again creates more constraints and kind of varies up the gameplay even more. You have different ways of, say, performing your actions. For example, in one variant, you essentially lay out 5 cards down, and then you perform your actions sequentially in the order that you place the cards down. So it's almost like a programmable movement sort of system, which again works very nicely. And then if you want that choice, you can go for it. The rules again are very simple, and that's one of the things I'm very happy about, is that this game doesn't ever overcomplicate itself. A lot of the things, you have a nice handy dandy reference sheet which just talks about all the characteristics. I think we played 2 games and it lasted about 5 hours with everything included, and that was pack up and set up and then drafting and playing the game. And honestly, I think we had about 3 rules questions in the entire thing, which is very surprising for a game that has this much depth and levels to it. Now, let's just talk about the content. There's a lot of content that you do get in the game. Unfortunately, this game pretty much can only be acquired by Kickstarter. Thankfully, they are doing another Kickstarter in, I think, late April or early May. It's going to be in the spring of 2018. And honestly, I'm thinking of picking this up. there is the base set, and then there's obviously all the stretch goal exclusives or Kickstarter stuff that came with it, very much like Simon does. But then there's also 4 expansions, like 4 big box expansions, which has like the Titans to the game. You have Hera gets added to the game. You have, I think, Hephaestus, the Greek god of the forge, and then you also have Poseidon as one of the last gods added. So basically, again, all your favorite gods are there. But really, if you have all of that, that's a lot of playability. I mean, we played 2 games, and we probably only seen not even like a quarter of what the game and what the miniatures have to offer, and how much, again, variability the game offers. If you're taking characters that are, say, reliant on using their skills, you might want to take a hero that brings a lot of war cards to the field. Or likewise, if you're taking a hero that does a lot of actions, it might not be a good idea to kind of fill up your deck so much that you don't get enough uses out of certain heroes. But really, if you get this game and all the expansions, you have a ton of entertainment. This game will happily last you until you die, essentially. I don't think you'll ever need another skirmish miniatures game in that sense, unless you want a different theme. But here's the even better part. I like Greek mythology, right? But coming out later, I think at the end of 2018, will be Ragnarok or Viking mythology. I think that's the one. It is Viking mythology, or Norse mythology is what it's actually called. And they're doing it now in Norse mythology Pantheon. Mythic Battles Ragnarok, I think it's going to be called. And that's just great. That means you're going to be having things like Thor and Odin, and then you can bring them into your Mythic Battles Pantheon and have Odin up against Zeus, or you can have Thor up against Freya if you wanted to, or no, they're both Norse gods. You could have Thor up against Ares if you wanted to, or again, you could have Freya up against Aphrodite. You could have those scenarios. And of course, they've even released a scenario editor which people can go in and basically customize the map and add their own scenario take on it. There's a lot to this game. It's simple, it's fast, there's so much content to it. If you like mythology, like Greek mythology and that kind of stuff, you'll absolutely be driven insane by this, because it's just so wonderfully done. And again, just the amount of content you have. I think the first time I played this game, the very first thing that popped into my head was, this is Age of Empires mythology, but the board game. If you've ever played the Age of Empires series and played the Age of Mythology one of that franchise, you will know what I'm talking about. When you bring out a Hydra onto the board and it just ravages a whole troop of enemies, you feel so powerful. You feel like a god. You feel like you're commanding titans. And holy hell, the quality of the miniatures is mind-blowingly good. I will say now, the quality of the poses, the figures themselves aren't very dynamic in how they're posing, and I would like a bit more creativity in that. Simon tends to do it a bit better. But I will say now, the quality is fantastic. You have a lot of miniatures that have spears as a weapon, and those are all straight and pointy. You have a lot of figures that are just so nicely done. Again, you're looking at the picture now in front of you, and I can tell you now the miniatures are basically what these pictures look like. Absolutely fantastic. I will say again, some of the details are a bit sorely lacking in certain places. For example, the characters' faces are sometimes not as nicely sculpted as they probably should have been, but it's a minor thing. The quality of the plastic is just so good, and you get, again, so much in this game. Really, when it comes down to it, bottom line is, I'm almost definitely going to choose to back this, or the second Kickstarter of this, as opposed to, say, getting something like maybe the Batman miniatures game or the Harry Potter miniatures game coming out later this year. I think this is probably one of the best skirmish games I've played. And this is, again, me talking about a person who raves about games like Rune Wars. I think, just in terms of what they're offering, this is so good. And again, it's a very nice system. It's very simple. And again, the depth comes in terms of how you play and what characters you choose. Really, I just want to give this 2 thumbs up. This is such a good production. And I think, if my one biggest concern is that Monolith has now split from Mythic Games, and that Mythic Battles Ragnarok might not be as good in terms of its rules, that's my one concern. But this is really good. I mean, it just brings me back to like drama in grade 10, and me talking and knowing all about the Greek gods like Hermes and Pan. Absolutely wonderful, full of theme. Combat is simple. The game just works on every level. There's almost no blemishes to talk about. Just, I would say, backing it. Anyway, thank you so much. That's going to be it for me. If you have enjoyed this video, of course, remember to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more of these videos coming out in the future. Again, I want to say thank you to Luke for letting me play this. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.